Welcome back, Wastelanders. Today's confession comes from the darkest corners of the Institute's operations, a story about stolen consciousness and the true cost of synthetic humanity. You're about to hear a testimony that the Institute never wanted revealed. The lore begins now. I used to think the worst thing that could happen was forgetting who you are. I was wrong. The worst thing is remembering who you were while watching someone else live your life with your memories, your mannerisms, your love for your daughter all perfectly copied and filed away in some underground vault of stolen consciousness. My name is Jackson Finch. At least that was my name when I was human, before the Institute turned me into Memory Bank 7834. Before they made me into this green-skinned monster who can barely remember his own daughter's face, but can't forget the 17 hours I spent paralyzed in that white room. I was a traitor. Good one too. Ran routes between Diamond City Goodneighbor and Bunker Hill for 15 years. Knew every raider checkpoint, every safe house, every shortcut through the ruins. I had a daughter named Emma. She was 8 years old, loved collecting bottle caps, and had her mother's smile. Her mother, Sarah, died to raiders when Emma was 3. After that, it was just me and her. I worked the routes she stayed with Old Man Stockton at Bunker Hill when I was gone. Simple life. Dangerous, sure, but it was ours. That was 2 years ago. 2 years since they took me from Bunker Hill in the middle of the night. I remember it was a Tuesday, late October, 2285. I just finished a run from Diamond City, sold off some pre-war tech I'd scavenged from a building in the fens. Good haul. Made enough caps to get Emma new shoes and maybe a real gun for when she got older. She was getting to that age where she needed to learn to protect herself. I was going to teach her to shoot. Never got the chance. I was staying at the Savoldi place, the common house where traders bunked when they came through. I remember lying down on that thin mattress thinking about Emma, sleeping safe in Kessler's shack, thinking about maybe settling down, opening a shop, giving her a normal life. Then I heard it. That sound. Like reality was tearing open. That's what teleportation sounds like when you're on the receiving end. Blue light flooded the room so bright it hurt. I grabbed for my pistol, but something hit me, some kind of shock weapon that froze every muscle in my body. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, could only watch as these figures in white coats materialized around me. Coursers. I'd heard the stories. Everyone in the Commonwealth had. The Institute's hunters synths, so advanced they could walk among humans undetected. But I'd never believed I was important enough to warrant their attention. I was just a traitor, just a father trying to survive. The last thing I saw before they drugged me was the Bunker Hill monument through the window, that tall obelisk, pointing at the stars like an accusing finger. I woke up strapped to a surgical chair, not tied down, strapped, heavy metal restraints across my chest, arms, legs, forehead. The chair was tilted back at 45 degrees, so I was staring at the ceiling. White ceiling, white walls, white lights so bright they burned. Everything was white, except for the machines. Banks of computer screens showing data I couldn't understand, and this device hanging over my head like a mechanical spider with a dozen thin arms ending in needles. There were 3 of them at first, scientists in white coats with institute patches on their shoulders. They talked about me like I was a specimen on a lab table, like I couldn't hear them. One of them, a woman with dark hair pulled back tight, was reading from a data pad. Subject designation 7834, Jackson Finch, age 42, Commonwealth trader, primary routes, Bunker Hill to Diamond City. No known institute associations, no significant radiation exposure, excellent cognitive function based on preliminary scans. She looked at me then, right in the eyes, and smiled. Not a cruel smile, not even an unkind one, just professional, clinical. Subject's hippocampus shows excellent preservation. Will commence extraction of experiential data at 0600 hours. I tried to talk, tried to beg, tried to ask what they wanted, but whatever they drugged me with had paralyzed everything except my eyes and my ability to breathe. I could only lie there and listen as they discussed the procedure. The woman, I later learned her name was Dr. Loken, explained to a younger scientist that they needed authentic behavioral patterns for their infiltrator units, that the synth replacements worked best when they had real memories to draw from real experiences to mimic. That I was particularly valuable because my trade routes meant I had extensive knowledge of Commonwealth settlements and their inhabitants. Then, Dr. Loken said something that made my blood freeze. We'll need to extract the daughter's information as well. The emotional attachment could be useful for long-term deep cover operations. File a requisition for the child, Emma Finch, age 8. We'll process her next week. That's when I started fighting. Not physically, I couldn't move, but inside in my mind, I was screaming, I was thrashing, I was begging them not to touch my daughter. They couldn't hear me, or maybe they could and just didn't care. The extraction started at dawn. I know because I could see through a high window that the sky was getting lighter. They lowered the mechanical device over my head. I felt cold metal touch my scalp, felt a dozen pinpricks as the needle slid through my skull. There was no anesthesia. Dr. Loken said they needed me conscious for accurate memory retrieval. Said unconscious memories weren't as vivid, weren't as useful. Have you ever felt your memories being pulled out of your head? It's not like forgetting. Forgetting is passive, gradual, natural. This was active, surgical. It felt like hooks sinking into my brain and dragging pieces out. I felt each memory as it was copied. My wedding day, the birth of my daughter, Sarah's death, Emma's first words, trading negotiations, settlement layouts, people's faces, names, habits. 17 hours. That's how long it took them to download everything that made me who I was. They had screens all around the room showing my memories as they extracted them. I watched my life play out like a holotape. I saw Sarah teaching Emma to count bottle caps. I saw myself bargaining with raiders using information about their habits that I'd gathered over years. I saw private moments, intimate moments, things I'd never told anyone, all of it being recorded, cataloged, filed away. They were taking everything, not just facts but feelings, not just events but the emotions attached to them. The grief I felt at Sarah's funeral, the joy when Emma laughed, the fear during close calls with super mutants, all of it extracted and measured and saved. Dr. Loken kept up a running commentary for the other scientists. She'd point at the screens and explain what made certain memories valuable. See here the way he instinctively assessed the raider's weapon before negotiating. That's experienced trader behavior. Very useful. Or, note the emotional resonance in the daughter memories. Strong paternal attachment. We can use this for long-term cover identities. A synth with this kind of emotional depth will be nearly impossible to detect. Halfway through, maybe hour 9, they brought out my replacement, wheeled it in on a gurney. Wheeled him in. I have to remember he looked human. He looked exactly like me. Same face, same scars, same calluses on my hands from years of handling cargo. He was unconscious, naked, perfect. They'd already grown him in their labs, built him from lab-grown bones and synthetic muscle. Now they were giving him my mind. They positioned him next to me so I could watch. They inserted a cable from my extraction device into a port at the base of his skull. I watched my memories flow into him. I watched his eyes move behind closed lids as he dreamed my dreams. I watched him mouth Sarah's name. I watched him smile Emma's smile, the one he'd learned from my memories of her. They were copying me. Every thought, every habit, every mannerism, they were making a perfect duplicate. If you're still with me after hearing this, hit that like and subscribe button. Hour 12. They started showing him how to walk like me, how to favor my left leg slightly because of an old injury from a mole rat bite, how to scratch my neck when I was nervous, how to hold Emma's hand with my thumb over hers, protective, the way I'd done since she was small enough to lift. The synth was awake now, practicing. A young scientist had him repeat phrases I used to say. Fair trade? Fair price? Emma, stay close to me. I'll be back by sunset, I promise. His voice was my voice. Perfect pitch, perfect tone, perfect inflection, because he had 17 hours of my speech patterns to draw from. Dr. Loken walked between us, comparing. She'd have my replacement perform an action, then check it against the screens, showing my memories of doing the same thing. She was quality testing, making sure the product matched the source material. That's all I was to them. Source material, a template to be copied and discarded. Around hour 15, she started discussing phase 2. That's when I learned what happened to people after the Institute extracted their memories. They didn't let you go. They didn't even keep you imprisoned. You were genetic material now, biological waste that happened to still be breathing. Dr. Loken pulled up my file on her datapad and read aloud to her team. Subject 7834 shows acceptable radiation exposure levels, but genetic degradation typical of Commonwealth wastelanders. DNA unsuitable for further synth production. However, tissue samples may prove useful for bioscience division experiments. She looked at me then, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not quite guilt, maybe acknowledgement. Subject approved for FEV protocol. Phase 2 will commence immediately following memory extraction completion. FEV, forced evolutionary virus. I'd seen supermutants my whole life, fought them, fled from them, traded with the rare ones smart enough to negotiate. I knew what that virus did to people. It took your humanity and left you a monster. But I couldn't have known that the Institute was the source of the Commonwealth supermutants, that for decades they'd been kidnapping wastelanders, extracting whatever data they needed, then using the leftovers as test subjects for their FEV experiments. The extraction finished at hour 17. They removed the needles from my skull. I felt each one slide out, felt blood trickle down my face. The paralysis drug was wearing off. I could move my fingers now, could turn my head slightly. Not enough to escape, just enough to watch what came next. They unstrapped my replacement from his gurney. He stood up, testing his balance, getting used to his body. Then he looked at me, made direct eye contact, and I saw recognition there. He knew who I was because he had my memories. He remembered being me. In his mind, he'd lived my life, loved my wife, raised my daughter. He was me, just cleaner, healthier, without the scars that 17 years in the wasteland had left on my soul. "How do you feel?" Dr. Loken asked him. He touched his chest, his face like he was making sure he was real. Then he spoke in my voice. "I feel like I've been asleep for a long time, like I'm waking up from a bad dream." He looked at me again. "That's what you told Emma after Sarah died, when she had nightmares. You'd tell her she was waking up from a bad dream and everything would be okay now." I wanted to kill him. I wanted to scream that those were my words, my memories, my daughter. But all I could do was stare as Dr. Loken smiled and made a note on her datapad. Excellent integration. Subject demonstrates full access to source memories and appropriate emotional responses. Cleared for surface deployment. They dressed him in my clothes, the ones they'd taken when they first brought me here. My jacket with the burn mark on the sleeve from a cooking fire. My boots with the left sole starting to separate. My pack with Emma's drawing tucked in the inside pocket, the one she'd made of the two of us holding hands. He checked the pack and found the drawing. He looked at it and smiled. My smile, Emma's smile, the smile I'd given her 1,000 times when she showed me her artwork. Then, Dr. Loken gave him his mission briefing. He was being placed back at Bunker Hill. The Institute had wiped security footage from the night of my abduction. As far as anyone knew, I'd simply spent the night at the Savoldi place. The synth would wake up in that same room tomorrow morning, return to his daughter, and continue my trade routes exactly as I had. But now, he'd be gathering intelligence, observing settlement defenses, identifying potential Institute targets, mapping resistance movements, living my life while spying for the people who'd stolen it. "What about Emma?" he asked, my voice asking about my daughter. "The child remains a potential asset," Dr. Loken said. "We've filed acquisition paperwork, but director's office hasn't approved it yet. For now, maintain the father-daughter relationship. It provides excellent cover and keeps you integrated in Bunker Hill's social structure. If she's acquired, you'll be notified and a new cover story will be provided." He nodded. accepting orders to betray my daughter with the same calm efficiency I'd used when planning trade routes. Then, they led him away to a teleportation chamber. I watched him go, watched myself walk away to live my life without me. Dr. Loken turned back to me. Now then, let's discuss your contribution to Bioscience Division. She pulled up files on her screen. I couldn't read most of it from my angle, but I saw images, pictures of super mutants in containment cells, charts showing mutation progression, and lists, long lists of numbers, subject designations. 7834 was about to become a much bigger number in a much darker database. They wheeled me through the institute on a gurney. I was strapped down again, but the paralysis drug had worn off enough that I could move my head look around. The place was massive, clean white corridors that seemed to go on forever, labs behind glass walls where I saw things that made my stomach turn, synths in various stages of construction, humans in containment cells, experiments I couldn't identify and didn't want to understand. We passed a lab where I saw children, synth children I realized because they weren't growing. Dr. Loken noticed me looking. Generation 3. Synths don't age, she explained like she was giving a tour. The children are manufactured at their current developmental stage and remain that way indefinitely. Useful for certain deep cover scenarios, but limited application overall. She said it so casually, talking about creating children who would never grow up, never change, never become anything more than what they were built to be. The Bioscience Division was in a lower level, accessed through security checkpoints that required hand scans and verbal authentication. The labs down here were different, less clean, more industrial. I smelled something chemical and organic, a mix that made me gag. Through observation windows, I saw containment tanks filled with murky green liquid, and in those tanks shapes, human shapes but wrong, too big, too muscular, changing. They brought me to a preparation room, white tile walls, drains in the floor, the kind of room designed to be hosed down after messy work. A scientist I'd never seen before was waiting. Young man couldn't have been more than 25 with nervous hands and eyes that wouldn't meet mine. Dr. Loken handed him my file. Subject 7834, she said. Memory extraction, complete data, archived surface replacement deployed, cleared for FEV injection trial. You're using the modified strain, correct? The one with enhanced mutation speed? The young scientist nodded. Yes, ma'am. Protocol Gamma 7, accelerated transformation with maintained consciousness during initial stages. Director wants us to document cognitive decline in real time. His hands shook as he prepared the injection. He looked at me once quickly, then away. Subject shows no genetic anomalies that would prevent transformation. Radiation exposure is actually lower than average Commonwealth baseline. Should produce a stable mutation. Like I was a batch of chemicals they were mixing. Like my humanity was just a variable in their equation. They strapped me to a different chair. This one was reinforced. Heavy steel restraints built to hold something much stronger than a human. I understood why when the young scientist approached with the syringe. The FEV was thick, almost gel-like, and it glowed faintly green. He hesitated before injecting it. Just for a second, I saw something in his face, doubt maybe, or disgust, but then Dr. Loken cleared her throat and he pressed the needle into my arm and pushed the plunger down. It burned, like liquid fire spreading through my veins. I felt it move up my arm across my chest, into my brain. The transformation started immediately. My muscles began to spasm. My bones started to ache. Deep grinding pain as they began to grow and reshape. I screamed. They'd given me my voice back just so they could hear me scream. The young scientist was taking notes, recording my vital signs, documenting every stage of my transformation. Initial injection at 1300 hours, subject displays expected pain response, muscle mass increasing at 0.3% per minute, bone density rising. Skin discoloration beginning. He was narrating my destruction like it was a science experiment, which I suppose it was. But here's what they didn't expect. Here's what made me different from the hundreds of other subjects they'd processed through this lab. They'd just spent 17 hours downloading my memories, all of them, including every fight I'd ever been in, every survival situation, every moment of desperate strength I'd needed to stay alive in the Commonwealth. They'd copied my instinct for violence and my will to survive, and then they'd given me the physical power to act on both. The transformation took 6 hours. 6 hours of conscious mutation while they watched and recorded. I felt my mind fragmenting, felt memories slipping away like water through my fingers, but one memory wouldn't leave. The white room, the extraction chair, Dr. Loken's face. I was losing everything that made me human, but I couldn't forget the people who'd done this to me. That memory burned itself into whatever I was becoming. Around hour 4, my muscle mass had increased enough that the restraints were cutting into my skin. Green skin now thick and tough. The young scientist noticed and made a note but didn't loosen the straps. He was more worried about me breaking free than about my comfort. Smart as it turned out. Hour 5, my skull was reshaping. I could feel my brain being compressed, reorganized, simplified. Memories were disappearing. I forgot my trade routes, forgot settlement names, forgot faces of people I'd known for years, but I couldn't forget Emma, couldn't forget my daughter's face. It was like that memory had been burned so deep during the extraction that even the thief couldn't erase it. I held on to it, a drowning man gripping the last piece of debris from a shipwreck. If this story has kept you listening this far and you want more of these dark confessions from the wasteland, hit that like button. It really motivates me to create similar Fallout lores. Hour 6, the restraints snapped, not because I tried to break them, because my arms had grown so thick the metal couldn't contain them anymore. The young scientist jumped back, reaching for an alarm, but my hand was already around his throat. My new hand, massive green, strong enough to crush steel, strong enough to kill. I didn't kill him. Even with my mind fragmenting, even with rage and pain flooding what was left of my consciousness, I couldn't kill him. He was young, scared, probably didn't have a choice about working here. Instead, I threw him against the wall hard enough to knock him unconscious. Then I grabbed Dr. Loken. She didn't scream, didn't beg, just looked at me with those clinical eyes and said, "Fascinating. You're retaining more cognitive function than predicted. Subject 7834, you're experiencing stage 5 mutation but demonstrating stage 2 intelligence levels. This is highly irregular." I wanted to tell her I wasn't a subject, wasn't a number. I was... Jackson Finch and I had a daughter named Emma, and I would die before I let them take her. But when I opened my mouth, what came out wasn't words, just a roar. A sound of pure rage that came from somewhere deep in my chest. The Eve had taken my voice even if it couldn't quite take my mind. I dropped Dr. Loken and ran, smashed through the lab door like it was paper. Alarms started blaring, red lights flashing, synth security guards materializing from doorways. I fought my way through them. My new body knew how to fight even if my mind was struggling to direct it. Raw instinct, survival programming burned into me by 17 years in the wasteland and 17 hours on an extraction table. I found myself in a corridor I didn't recognize, had to backtrack. My memory was failing. I couldn't remember which way I'd come, couldn't remember the layout they'd wheeled me through, but I could smell something. Chemical and organic, the smell from the containment tanks. I followed it deeper into bioscience division. That's when I found them. The memory banks, not people anymore, just storage. A massive room filled with computer servers and on every terminal screen faces, thousands of faces, Commonwealth citizens who'd been processed through the same extraction I'd survived. Their memories cataloged and filed, their lives reduced to data. I stopped at one terminal. My mutating fingers were too big for the keyboard, but I managed to pull up files. Subject designations running from the hundreds into the thousands. I was 7834, but there were entries going back to the early 2200s. 60 years of kidnappings, 60 years of memory extraction. The Institute had been stealing consciousness for longer than I'd been alive. The files listed everything they'd taken, not just personal memories, but specialized knowledge, a farmer's understanding of crop rotation, a doctor's medical training, a Minuteman's tactical experience, a mother's child-rearing techniques. They were building a complete library of human experience, every skill, every memory, every emotion that made Wastelanders who they were. All of it copied, stored, available for download into whatever synth needed those particular capabilities. I found entries marked composite integration, synths who'd been given memories from multiple sources. One infiltrator had received tactical training from a former gunner, social skills from a good neighbor bartender, and family memories from a Diamond City merchant. They were mixing and matching human experiences like building blocks, creating synthetic people from pieces of real ones. Then I found the cross-reference files, source material disposition, what happened to people after extraction. Most were marked FIEV protocol discarded. Some were marked terminated genetic incompatibility. A few, very few were marked retained ongoing study. I searched for my designation. Subject 7834. Status FIEV protocol initiated. Expected. Disposition discard to surface upon mutation completion. They were going to dump me topside, release me into the Commonwealth as just another super mutant, another monster for people to fear and kill, another piece of the Institute's chaos that kept the surface world too disorganized to threaten them. But then I found something else, a family connection notation in my file. Subject 2179. Processed October 2255. 30 years ago, same surname Finch, cross-reference indicated father-son biological relationship, memory integration successful, surface replacement deployed long-term, status active, no recall required. My father. They'd taken my father 30 years ago. When I was 12 years old, my dad had disappeared for 3 days. When he came back, he said he'd been captured by raiders but escaped. He seemed different after that, calmer, more careful. I'd thought it was trauma. I'd thought he'd been changed by whatever the raiders did to him. He hadn't been changed. He'd been replaced. The man who raised me from age 12 onward wasn't my father. He was a synth with my father's memories. Everything he taught me, every piece of advice he gave me, every time he said he loved me, it was programming. Copied behavior from a real man who died in this building 3 decades ago. I felt something crack inside me, not my mind that was already fragmenting from the FF. Something deeper, the foundation of who I was. Because if my father had been a synth, what did that make me? Was I even Jackson Finch? Or was I just the biological son of a man who'd been erased and replaced before I was old enough to know the difference? I pulled up more files, found documentation of my father's replacement, his mission parameters. He'd been assigned to maintain his family life while observing trade route development in the Commonwealth. My entire childhood had been an intelligence gathering operation. Every dinner table conversation, every life lesson, every moment of paternal affection, all of it real to me but ultimately in service to the Institute. The worst part? He'd been a good father. The synth wearing my dad's face had raised me well, protected me, taught me how to survive. Did that make it better or worse? That the Institute's programming could be a better parent than some real humans? I didn't have time to process it. Security was closing in. I could hear combat synths in the corridor. I grabbed what data I could, ripping storage drives from the terminals. Evidence. Proof. If I survived, people needed to know what the Institute was doing. I ran deeper into the facility, found myself in the FEV lab proper, the place where they'd been creating super mutants for decades. Huge vats filled with green liquid, observation chambers with reinforced glass, and subjects, dozens of them, in various stages of transformation. Some were still human enough to scream, others had already lost that ability, reduced to roaring and pounding against their restraints. One vat held a woman. I could still see her face through the green fluid, still see the terror in her eyes as her body mutated around her consciousness. She was awake. They were all awake. The Institute kept them conscious during the transformation because it produced better data. More detailed documentation of the mutation process, how many people in the Commonwealth were actually super mutants created by the Institute, how many of the monsters we fought and feared and killed had been wasteland citizens just trying to survive. Farmers, traders, settlers, parents, all of them kidnapped, processed, mutated, and discarded. I smashed the vats, everyone I could reach, released the subjects inside. Some attacked me immediately, too far gone to recognize I was trying to help. Others just ran, escaping into the Institute's corridors. Chaos. That's what I created. Enough chaos to cover my escape. I found maintenance tunnels, service passages that the Institute's cleaning synths used. My enhanced strength let me tear through locked doors. My mutating bulk let me smash through barriers. I didn't know where I was going, just away from the white rooms and the extraction chairs and the clinical voices cataloging human suffering. I emerged in something called the reactor chamber, massive, industrial, the Institute's power source. I could feel heat radiating from the core, could see technicians fleeing as alarms blared and escaped FEV subjects rampaged through their pristine facility. That's where I found the relay, the teleportation device they used to access the surface. It was locked down, security protocols engaged, but I had one advantage. During my rampage through bioscience, I'd grabbed a synth security officer, broken his neck and taken his hand. Not proud of it, but survival doesn't care about pride. I used the severed hand to activate the relay, slapped it against the biometric scanner. The system accepted it, started cycling up. I had maybe 30 seconds before coursers would arrive to stop me. I could see them materializing in the distance. Faster than human, stronger than human, programmed for one purpose: retrieve Institute property. I was Institute property now. Subject 7834, a failed experiment that had broken containment. The relay activated. Blue light surrounded me, reality twisted. I felt myself being pulled apart and reassembled, and then I was standing in the glowing sea, miles from any settlement, in the most irradiated hellscape in the entire Commonwealth. The Institute had dumped me in the one place where nobody would find me, where even if I survived, I'd be just another mutant shambling through the wastes. They'd calculated it perfectly, disposal without having to pull a trigger. But I survived. The FEV made me resistant to radiation, made me strong enough to fight off the rad scorpions and death claws that called the glowing sea home. And it didn't take my mind completely, not like it was supposed to. Maybe because they just extracted my memories and some of that data was still fresh in my brain. Maybe because I was special somehow, or maybe just luck. I made my way north. Took weeks. I avoided settlements because I knew what I looked like. Green skin, massive frame, the face of a monster. But inside, I was still Jackson Finch, still a father desperately trying to get back to his daughter. When I finally reached the outskirts of Bunker Hill, I hid in the ruins across from the main gate. I watched for 3 days, and on the third day I saw them, my replacement and Emma. They were leaving the settlement together. He was taking her on a supply run to a nearby settlement, teaching her the trade routes the same way I'd planned to. She was laughing, happy. She held his hand the exact way she used to hold mine, thumb over hers, protective. She looked up at him with complete trust, complete love, and he looked back at her with my face and my smile and my memories of loving her. I wanted to call out to her, wanted to tell her it was me, that her real father was right here, that the man she was with was a copy, a fake, a thing made in a lab. But what would she see if I stepped out? Not her father, a super mutant, a monster. She'd scream, he'd protect her, probably kill me, and she'd never know the truth. So I let them go, watched my daughter walk away with my replacement, watched him live my life better than I could now, because he had all my memories of being her father, but none of the trauma of what had been done to me. He could love her purely, couldn't I? Not anymore. Now when I looked at her, I saw the Institute requisition form. Emma Finch, age 8, approved for acquisition pending operational need. They still wanted her. My daughter was still on their list. a potential asset, and the thing wearing my face would hand her over the moment he received orders. Because he wasn't me. He was a machine programmed with my memories, and when the Institute activated his protocols, all those memories of loving Emma would take a back seat to his prime directives. I couldn't protect her anymore, couldn't even talk to her, but I could try to stop them from taking anyone else. I've spent the last 2 years hunting the Institute. Not physically, I can't get back inside, but hunting their operations, their surface agents, their kidnapping patterns. I've saved maybe a dozen people from being taken, killed 3 coursers that I know of, disrupted enough of their missions that they've probably updated my file from discarded to active threat. Other super mutants in the Commonwealth recognize me sometimes, not consciously, but I see something flicker in their eyes when they look at me, like they remember being human, like somewhere deep in their mutated brains they know they were someone before the Institute made them into monsters. We're all broken memory banks, walking data storage that the Institute filled up and threw away. I found others like me, super mutants who retained more intelligence than they should have. There's one who used to be a doctor. She can barely speak anymore, just grunts and broken words, but she still tries to heal injured wastelanders she comes across. Her hands shake when she works, but she remembers. Somewhere in that green mutated skull, she remembers taking an oath to do no harm. There's another who was a Minuteman. He still wears pieces of his old uniform torn and stretched across his massive frame. He attacks raiders on sight, protects settlements even though the settlers shoot at him, because he remembers his duty even if he can't remember his name. The Institute created hundreds of us, maybe thousands over the decades, released us into the Commonwealth to spread chaos and fear, but they didn't count on some of us remembering, didn't count on the FEV failing to completely erase what they'd burned into our brains during extraction. We're their mistake, their failed disposal protocol. I've been documenting everything I learned, using a salvaged terminal I found in a raider camp. My fingers are too big for the keys, so it takes hours to type even simple sentences, but I'm recording it all. The memory banks, the extraction process, the composite synths, the 60 years of kidnappings, proof that the Institute isn't just replacing a few key people. They're systematically cataloging human consciousness. Think about what that means. Every major settlement leader's decision-making process is in their database. Every trader's knowledge of supply routes, every soldier's tactical training, every parent's understanding of how to raise children. They have a complete psychological profile of the Commonwealth. They know how we think, how we react, how we love and fear and hope. They've stolen the collective consciousness of the wasteland, and they're using it to build better infiltrators. Synths that don't just look human, but think human, feel human, dream human, because they're made from the extracted experiences of real humans. My replacement doesn't just mimic me. He is me. Every memory, every habit, every emotional response. The only difference is that underneath all that copied humanity, there's a neurological implant waiting to override everything the moment the Institute needs him to be something else. How many people in the Commonwealth are actually synths with stolen memories? How many of the friends you trust, the leaders you follow, the family members you love are running on someone else's consciousness? The Institute has been doing this for 60 years. They could have replaced entire settlement populations by now. Here's something that keeps me awake at night. The Institute doesn't just use memories for infiltration, they use them for education. I found documentation of this in the files I grabbed. They teach synth children using extracted memories. My childhood memories of learning to trade to survive to navigate the wasteland are now educational material. Some synth child in the Institute is learning from my experiences, living through my memories like they're training simulations. My daughter's memories of me when they take her will become teaching tools. Her love for her father, her trust, her joy, all extracted and used to teach other synths how to mimic human emotion. They'll turn her childhood into data and use it to make better liars. I tried to warn people, approached a Minuteman patrol and tried to tell them about the memory banks. They shot at me. I'm a super mutant. Even if I could speak clearly enough to explain, why would they believe me? I'm the monster in their nightmares, not a reliable source of intelligence about the Institute's operations. So, I'm leaving this testimony, this confession, recording it in every way I can: text files on terminals, audio logs on holotapes, messages carved into walls near Institute operation sites, hoping someone will find them and believe, hoping someone will understand that the Institute isn't just making synths, they're stealing souls. I found evidence that they've been trading memories, actually selling them. There's a terminal entry I recovered that mentioned memory market transactions. The Institute has been exchanging extracted consciousness data with other organizations. Pre-war knowledge is particularly valuable. Vault dweller memories, ghoul recollections of the old world. They're trafficking in stolen human experience. Some memories are marked high value in their system: scientific knowledge, military training, technical expertise, but also things like strong parental bond and loyalty to faction and willingness to sacrifice. They're cataloging the best parts of humanity so they can copy them into their synthetic slaves. The worst part? I understand why my replacement loves Emma. I watched them together for months before I couldn't stand it anymore. He's a good father, patient, protective. He teaches her things I would have taught her. He makes her laugh the same way I used to. Because he has my memories of loving her. All the joy I felt when she was born, all the pride when she learned something new, all the fear when she was in danger. He has all of that. Is his love for her real? He feels it. She feels it. It affects his decisions, his priorities, his entire existence. But it's copied, downloaded, programmed based on my emotions that were extracted during 17 hours of surgical memory theft. Does that make it less real? Or is consciousness just patterns and responses regardless of whether it developed naturally or was artificially installed? I don't have answers. I just have rage and grief and these fragmenting memories that won't let me forget what was done to me. There's a synth in Good Neighbor, Nick Valentine. I've watched him from a distance. He's one of the Institute's early prototypes, has memories of a pre-war detective copied into his synth brain. He helps people, solves cases. He's a good person, or at least he acts like one, but his entire personality is based on a dead man's extracted consciousness. Is Nick Valentine the detective, or is he a machine wearing the detective's stolen mind? I thought about approaching him, telling him what I know. But what would I say? You're built from stolen memories, just like my replacement, and the Institute has thousands more memory banks they're using to build better versions of you? Would that help him? Or just destroy whatever piece he's found? The Institute's memory extraction doesn't just hurt the people they take, it hurts everyone who knew them. Emma lost her real father but doesn't know it. She's building new memories with a copy, and those memories are just as real to her as the ones she has of me. When she's older and looks back on her childhood, she'll remember her father teaching her the trade routes, protecting her, loving her. She'll never know that man was a synth with downloaded emotions. If this confession meant something to you, leave a like. It's the only way I know you liked the video. I've been trying to find other victims, other memory banks who escaped or were discarded. It's harder than you'd think. Most super mutants have lost too much of themselves to remember being human. The FEV does its job eventually, erases what the extraction couldn't. I'm an anomaly, a glitch in the Institute's disposal protocol, and I can feel myself slipping. I forget more each day, can't remember my wife's face anymore, can't remember the name of my favorite bartender in Diamond City, can't remember what Sarah's voice sounded like when she said my name. The FEV is catching up to me, finishing the job it started in that white room, but I can't forget Emma. I can't forget the extraction. I can't forget Dr. Loken's clinical smile or the 17 hours of having my consciousness surgically copied. Those memories are permanent, burned so deep that even complete mutation can't erase them. Maybe because they're the last thing that makes me human, the last thing that separates Jackson Finch from just another super mutant in the wastes. I wonder how many of us there are. How many discarded memory banks are wandering the Commonwealth carrying fragments of stolen consciousness inside our mutated skulls? The Institute's dirty secret isn't just that they create super mutants, it's that each one used to be someone. A person with a life, a family, hopes and dreams and fears. We're all someone's missing father or mother or child, someone's kidnapped friend, someone's unresolved mystery, and our memories are still in their database, still being used, still teaching synths how to be human by showing them what it's like to be us. The Institute has built the most complete library of human experience ever created, and they did it by stealing consciousness from people who never consented to being archived. What happens to consciousness when it's copied? Am I still me if a perfect copy exists with all my memories? Is my replacement more Jackson Finch than I am now because he has my humanity without the trauma of mutation? These are questions I think about while hiding in the ruins, watching my daughter grow up with a father who remembers being me. I'm leaving these testimonies throughout the Commonwealth, hidden in abandoned buildings, buried near Institute operation sites, uploaded to terminals and settlements, hoping that eventually someone will piece together the truth. That the Institute isn't just replacing people, they're harvesting consciousness, building a database of stolen souls. To whoever finds this, whoever's listening, I need you to understand something. The Institute sees wastelanders as raw materials, not people. We're source code to be copied, biological templates to be extracted, genetic samples to be tested. They don't hate us, they just don't see us as human enough to matter. And that's more terrifying than hatred, because you can fight hatred. You can defend against malice. But how do you fight indifference? How do you make someone care about your humanity when they've already reduced you to data in their memory banks? My name is Jackson Finch. I was a traitor, a father, a survivor. The Institute made me into Memory Bank 7834 and then into just another super mutant monster. But I'm still here, still remembering, still warning anyone who'll listen. They're coming for more of us. The memory extraction program never stopped. Every mysterious disappearance, every person who vanishes in the night, every settler who returns acting slightly different. Could be the Institute, could be their coursers, could be another consciousness about to be stolen and archived. Watch for the signs, the blue light of teleportation, the too perfect copy, the loved one who remembers everything but feels slightly wrong. Question the people you trust, not with paranoia but with awareness, because the Institute's greatest weapon isn't their synths or their coursers or their fev. It's that we can't tell the difference between real and copy anymore. Emma will never know her real father is a super mutant living in the ruins watching her from a distance. She'll grow up with my replacement. Maybe she'll be happy. Maybe he'll protect her better than I could have. Maybe his copied love is enough, but she's still on their list, still a potential asset. And one day, if the Institute decides they need her, my replacement will hand her over. Because underneath all those memories of being her father, he's programmed to serve the Institute. And when they activate his protocols, Emma will disappear into a white room with extraction needles and 17 hours of conscious memory theft. Unless someone stops them first. This is my testimony, my confession, my warning. The Institute is building a library of stolen consciousness, and we're the books, discarded once they've copied our contents, left to shamble through the wastes or live false lives in our stolen identities. Remember us. Remember that we were human once. Remember that every super mutant might be carrying fragments of a person who was kidnapped and broken and discarded. And remember that anyone could be next, including you. My name was Jackson Finch. I remember.